trophy, darn it. And he might be one step closer to getting it.
Well, let's see if Brad Nelson can bring home the biscuits. Javier Dominguez, you'll see he's going to be very emotive throughout this match. We may see some emotion from Brad Nelson too. They have everything to play for here, but even so, the winner, it's not an easy matchup or it's not an easy road for them. They have to beat Piotr twice in the grand finals. So let's get things underway here. We got Temple of Mystery and Fabled Passage, along with 2 Ether Gusts, 2 Nightpack Ambushes, and a Frilled Mystic, but no ramp in the hand for Javier. Brad Nelson just deciding if he wants to keep his opening hand. He's got a mulligan.
It's a tough hand here for Dominguez. He's looking at 2 lands that enter the battlefield tapped. 1 in Temple of Mystery that can, of course, fix the hand. And then Fabled Passage, he doesn't have, of course, 4 mana, so he's going to predictably keep this island on top. A couple copies of Ether Gust, which are cards that can be very good in the matchup at times. And then Nightpack Ambusher, as we know, if that does get on the battlefield unchecked, it will win the game all by itself.
All right, so Brad Nelson's got a decent hand. No big 4 mana threats. He does have acceleration in the Growth Spiral, and he's got 2 Nope spells in the Quench and the Negate, so whatever Javier Dominguez may cost now can be answered, but it's going to be this case of just dancing around each other.
Yeah, it looks like Dominguez
trying to get things to resolve.
He's going to let that resolve the Growth Spiral, so we'll see what land Brad wants to play. It'll be an island. Brad picked up a copy, of Frilled Mystic off of the Growth Spiral too, so lands are not a problem here for Nelson. Land number 4 being that Fabled Passage.
We're going to crack that. We're going to go and get a basic land from the library and give it a shuffle. He's got a lot of Nope in hand, and the Nope on a stick in the form of the Frilled Mystic, so that will answer any threat that may come from Javier, who's not very happy with his draw, looking for land number 4 there. Yep. Nightpack Ambusher, looking very good for Brad Nelson so far.
He was unable to find one, so now here comes a Growth Spiral. I'm curious if Brad wants to interact with this card or not. He does have Quenches and Negates. Yeah. He could also slide in a Nightpack Ambusher here as well. I don't think he wants to do that, though, but he is giving this some consideration. 5 cards in hand, 4 different options of how to respond to this Growth Spiral.
There may be some consideration here just to prevent the card draw. You can see he's struggling on land, so that's why he's taking just a little bit longer to think about it. The longer the game goes, the worse Quench gets, so maybe worthwhile sending one in now, but decides, nope, gonna let you have it. There is land number 4 for Javier. And land number 5.
Yeah, slightly surprising they're not countering that at all, but now Javier has 5 lands just like Brad does.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if Brad wants to interact here or not. He will wait. I think the thing that Brad's looking for is exactly that. Land number 6, the ability to play Nightpack Ambusher plus a counterspell in the same turn, or 3 counterspells in Quench, Quench, Negate. 6 mana is the flashpoint that he is looking for right now, and he has just found it. Naturally, he'd prefer for that land to enter the battlefield untapped, but he found it well enough.
I bet both players are in no major rush to get this game over and done with.
No, not really.
So he can take his time, get himself set up, protect the pupper with the counter spells like you mentioned.
It is also worth mentioning, too, if you make a misstep in this matchup and a Nissa resolves, you're going to lose the game almost immediately. Same thing can be said for a Nightpack Ambusher because that creature is so big. When these 2 players played the first time over the course of this weekend, their first and second games were extremely, extremely long, and their third game ended up being a rather short one that Brad played beautifully. So we can buckle up here a little bit. We should be in for a bit of a long haul.
Growth Spiral off the top there for Javier is going to pass the turn back, it seems. Will we see something from Brad Nelson here? I don't think so. Just the 1 counter spell, but the 2 Ether Gusts, importantly, for Javier.
Yeah, it does not behoove Brad to play anything with 5 mana available. 6 is, again, much more interesting. Simple math, 4 plus 2, 4 mana spell, 2 mana counter spell, or 2 plus 2 plus 2.
There we go. We've got a Nissa who shakes the world, but no way to protect it.
And this is a similar thing that Javier is looking at, too. Now he's got 4 plus 2 as well in Frilled Mystic plus Ether Gust or Nightpack Ambusher plus Ether Gust.
All right, well, one Nissa deserves another.
Yep.
And the difference is he's got a way to protect it. He just needs a little bit more mana down before he deploys the powerful Planeswalker. Looks like we're going to go for a Nightpack Ambusher first and foremost from Javier. Is he going to be the one to budge first?
Well, it looks like the answer to that question appears to be yes. And the reason that you're able to have a fight here is very simple. Javier can say, I'm going to cast this.
Yeah.
Okay. You have to, you're not letting this resolve, obviously. This is too good of a card to let resolve. But this entire fight is not over the Nightpack Ambusher. It's over the Nissa who shakes the world. Yep. That's the card that matters in this instance. This is the card that Javier wants to get onto the battlefield. So though Nightpack Ambusher is a very good card and it's one heck of a test spell, it's the powerful Planeswalker in the middle sitting next to that Ether Gust that Javier is actually trying to open the door up for.
Yeah. So Brad Nelson taking a while to determine if he should counter this or not, and rightfully so. This isn't, it's no pushover, this little puppy dog. He comes with friends, and he can run away with the game, so just got to use your resources accordingly. Make sure you don't leave yourself with defenses down.
And what this does too, what's so great about this play from a high level standpoint is that this makes a lot of sense for Javier to cast, because if it gets countered, okay, untap, draw, pass, whatever.
Yeah.
However, what makes this so deadly is that you make it so that Brad has to get the decision correct. You're just casting a spell. Don't mind me. I'm just playing a thing. You respond however you want to. And it looks like now Brad went for Frilled Mystic, and Javier is going to go towards Aether Gust.
Brad can respond with one of his other counter spells, and it's going to be a quench on the Aether Gust. So we will see the Nightpack Ambusher resolve. Both players now tapped out. Oh, no, it won't.
No, what's going to happen is Nightpack Ambusher, it does not resolve. But what's more important is the Temple of Mystery that's being played. We'll see where this goes. And again, this is the window to deploy a Nissa if Javier wants to do that. He can deploy Nissa safely. He doesn't have a breeding pool, which is kind of a bummer, to untap and be able to cast Aether Gust. But he has the window open for the powerful Planeswalker if he wants to deploy it. I think that's what that entire fight was about last turn.
Yeah, let's make sure that Brad Nelson's tapped out. Let's clear the way for Nissa, and hopefully find ways to protect her.
Again, this is one of those times where you would have preferred for land 7 in the battlefield untapped. But this could also be one of those times where you'd prefer to resolve a Nightpack Ambusher. But at the end of the day, this is the most powerful card in the deck. This is what got Javier and Brad to the dance. Yeah. No surprise here to see this come down. Javier's going to figure out which land to untap and defend his Nissa.
Yeah. If he's going to be blocking, putting the island in the way is perfectly fine. You don't want to lose the extra green. So now he's presenting a counterspell of sorts, or a way to interact with the Nissa should Brad try and fire off his own. He can also try the same thing, fire off a Nightpack Ambusher, see if it resolves.
Yeah, but we've got to keep in mind that we're in Brad's main phase right now.
Yeah.
So Brad actually has to start doing something, because no longer can we do this game of draw go that these two players were playing early on. Now Brad actually has to move and respond in kind. Otherwise, this is going to win the game all by itself. And this is the exact kind of position that you want to put your opponent in when facing a Nissa. So step one is attacking with a Frilled Mystic. And I like this attack here from Brad because Javier cannot afford to block. The reason for that is if that island is gone, then Javier only has access to 1 mana, and that means that Brad can resolve something. Brad, cognizant of that, gets his 3 points of damage in on the Nissa. Still some work to do on the Planeswalker, though.
So now, like you mentioned, players having to do things in their main phase. What are we going to see here? Is it going to be a big Hydro Crisis? Would we rather get the Nissa who shakes the world down to maximize on that?
Well,
Ambusher.
The difficult thing here is that the best cards that Brad can play in this situation are all green.
Yeah.
And that's where Aether Gust works itself into the equation. So it may have looked a little bit strange when Javier kept his opening hand with 2 copies of Aether Gust. It isn't even a hard counterspell. But the reason that he did that is simple. It's because the best cards that Brad can play to win the game are all green cards, and Brad can't even afford to cast any of them. He knows that, so all he can do is pass the turn back.
So now we're going to see the power of Nissa, double tapping for each of those forests. 8 mana available just off of those by themselves. So let's get to tapping. I think we're going to see a big, big jellyfish here.
Yeah, we're in worst case scenario here for Nelson. It's the Nissa Hydroid Crisis 1-2 combo that we have seen players use to such great effect over the course of 2019. Javier Dominguez starting to flex his muscles a little bit here in this game. Going to untap with Nissa, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him go towards Crisis for the full amount. He can do this while also playing around Quench, which I think is very, very important. You don't want to open yourself up to getting got by that card.
Sinister Sabotage can deal with his Hydroid Crisis, but as we know, the effect still resolves, so he will get the cards, he will get the life, but he may not get the big jellyfish. Does Brad Nelson want to Sinister Sabotage this?
Like a lot of what Javier did here with regards to mana distribution, so he's paid X equals 8. He's got 4 mana available, 2 green, a blue, and then Temple of Mystery. 2 green, of course, because of the basic force in combination with Nissa. So that means that he can play any 4 mana spell in his hand, be it Frilled Mystic or Nightpack Ambusher, or just cast Aether Gust, and be able to pay for a Quench. So that's really, really smart play there from Javier.
So as expected, the Hydro Crisis gets countered, not using the Frilled Mystic to protect it.
Nope, I like just sitting steady with that Frilled Mystic quite a bit.
There's bigger things to worry about, and one of them is about to make its way onto the battlefield. But Javier is going to say No, thank you.
Yeah, this is awesome for Javier. One of the cards that he actually picked up, which normally stinks in situations when the game gets this late, is Quench. But Quench, because there's a mana floating, it'll be a single green floating. Brad's going to try to negate. He's got his 2 mana available to do that, and Javier's going to say, dude, nice card, pay 2 more. Can't do that. And now Brad's turn is all sorts of messed up, and Nissa is still on the battlefield.
So there we go, the concession from Brad Nelson. Javier Dominguez picks up the first victory. As we've seen so often this weekend, Nissa on the battlefield, unchecked, just runs away with the game. So 1-0 to Javier Dominguez.
It is still one of the very best cards in Standard, and Javier just played with it beautifully. Again, remember that Night Pack Ambusher, it was all just a bait spell. If it resolves, super cool. The game's going to be hard for you. But if you counter it, that's perfect because I'm going to get my Nissa out there and win the game with that. That's exactly what happened there for your world champion.
Do you think players ever say, okay, I'm not going to counter anything except for this one card?
I mean, you like to have that in your head, but situations dictate what you can and cannot do. So as much as you would like to play the game in such a definite way, games change so rapidly that you have to assess every single situation and move forward accordingly, which is what these two are so very good at doing when playing this deck.
So now both players no stranger to the mirror match after having played each other, what, 3 times now?
This is the 3rd time right now in front of us.
All right, so let's see who will come away with the victory the 3rd time they're facing each other. This is for all the marbles. Taking a look at the opening hands, that's pretty darn good indeed, because we've got the growth spiral, we've got the mana acceleration. On the other side, we also have a growth spiral and a brazen borrower, as well as a Night Pack ambusher. So both pretty good looking hands.
These are good hands for both players. Do not be surprised to see main phase growth spirals to ensure that resolves from both players. Again, by doing that, that means you leave your shields down, yes, but this is something that you definitely want to resolve because having a mana advantage is very, very important. So it looks like Javier is thinking about starting with Breeding Pool as opposed to Fabled Passage here, which may surprise some, including myself, but he is much better at this whole playing Magic thing than I am, so I'll ride along with him with a Breeding Pool entering the battlefield tapped.
Mystical Dispute off the top there for Brad Nelson, so
big draw.
Yeah, that's very good. He can counter any blue shenanigans that may be afoot. Growth Spiral is going to find another Growth Spiral. He's going to get land number 3 down on the battlefield.
Love him playing that land untapped. That's very, very smart. He falls down to 18. The life points are fairly inconsequential.
They really don't matter.
And he gets the opportunity to counter a Growth Spiral in this situation, which is a beautiful thing.
So Growth Spiral, Paradise Druid in hand for Brad Nelson, but also a Night Pack Ambusher, which he may be working towards, depending on what Javier Dominguez does on his turn. Do you think he'd fire it off now? Nah, I don't think so.
No, there's no reason to make a move right now. Again, he can still kind of play a flash game. I think Brad is considering the ramifications of just playing a Paradise Druid or not, and I don't think he's going to do that. So he's going to sacrifice the Fabled Passage. This should be interesting if Javier wants to respond to this or not. He won't. So, okay, here comes Night Pack Ambusher. Fair enough.
I love this. So, hey, it's your turn, but I'm going to play my thing, and now you have to use your mana and counter this if you want to. Aether Gust, going to be the card to go for. Sending the big puppy back. Or no. Okay, changing his mind.
Yeah, he's thinking about maybe going towards Quench instead. This is a little bit interesting, too, about which counterspell you're supposed to use in this situation.
Looks like it's going to be Quench. Let's deal with this puppy dog once and for all. Don't give him the option of replaying it or finding the gap to do so. Another Growth Spiral off the top here for Javier, but he's not able to do anything else with his turn. Now...
So this is the turn. This is the turn, right, where if you're Brad, you want to slam down Nissa.
Yeah.
Just like what Javier did the last
ideal,
game.
yeah.
But instead, you just have a Paradise Druid, and that's really about it. So not the most high impact of plays there from Nelson. That Night Pack Ambusher he was maybe hoping was going to get gusted and not quenched. So
yeah. That would have been ideal. Get it back, replay it straight away, and then Bob's your uncle, pretty much. So 4 mana for Javier. Brad Nelson is certainly ahead in that department.
Yeah, Brad's ahead in the mana department, which is important, but he's not ahead insofar as like having the best thing going on right now. He doesn't have a Nissa or a Night Pack Ambusher on the battlefield, so you know he's just got to kind of sit tight here and hope to find one of his better cards. He does have plenty of interaction in Brazen Borrower, Mystical Dispute, and Aether Gust, so that's certainly nice. But he needs a Nissa-esque card to start running away with this game.
He certainly does. Needs a big payoff spell. Javier's got it. Now it's just a case of, all right, I need to try find a gap to resolve this thing now.
Yeah, that's the trick. Can he find a window like he beautifully set up in the first game to actually get Nissa onto the battlefield here in the second game and advance to that grand finals?
So that's where we are right now, everybody. If you're just joining us, we are 0-1 to Javier Dominguez. He's up a game in this lower finals. One of these players will advance to face Piotr Głogowski in the grand finals. Both of them on Simic Flash.
So just like that, Javier has taken the mana advantage away from Brad. It is now 7-6 in favor of Javier. Both these players have 4 cards. You see for Brad, Brazen Borrower, Mystical Dispute, Growth Spiral, and Aether Dust. For Javier, it's Paradise Druid on the stack and a bunch of goodies in hand, but his are a little bit more expensive than Brad's are.
So the Paradise Druid resolves. The 2 Paradise Druids just staring each other down on the battlefield. Brazen Borrower looks like it's going to get some action here. Perhaps just flashed in as a creature. Can't do anything else.
Nothing great to bounce, obviously. I mean, Paradise Druids have hexproof on the battlefield, so on and so forth. But what's kind of interesting here is, you know, if he deploys a Brazen Borrower, he's kind of announcing that, look, it's time to start attacking, time to try to start getting this game over with. Now, is it better to maybe start with the Growth Spiral? I think Brad has come to the decision that, yes, it is. Let me get a little bit more information before I do anything here. Okay.
Oh, alrighty. So now we're cooking.
So now you actually kind of like the idea a little bit more of actually playing Brazen Borrower.
Yeah.
Because, hey, Javier, why don't you counter this,
Just counter this. It's totally fine. I have nothing else in hand worth countering. Scout's honor.
So the game continues to be about resolving Nissa.
Yeah.
That's what these games are about. You saw it in the first game. Javier was able to create a situation where he got the Planeswalker on the battlefield. Game more or less ended on the spot. Nelson's looking to try to do the same right now. He's a little bit behind on mana, but Nissa catches you up there and so many other places.
So a couple of decisions here for Brad Nelson to make. Does he want to fire off this Brazen Borrower, potentially have it eaten by a counterspell?
Now, see, I would be surprised if Javier moves here on this. This card is good, but I would deem it annoying more so than game-winning.
Frilled Mystic is the only answer for it.
You see Javier. Okay.
All right, he's going for it.
Knock, knock, doors open.
Will we see a Mystical Dispute? Huh. So he could get the flyer and just fire off the Nissa next turn. And hope like hell Javier has nothing to do.
Okay.
Interesting.
Now keep in mind, let me make sure I've got my turn right here, that
he can't counter it anyway.
Yeah, Javier played Paradise Druid last turn.
Yeah, so no mana there, no feigning a negate or a quench for him.
Yeah,
so here it goes.
Windows open.
Hello, Nissa.
Yep.
Would you like to shake some worlds? Yes, I would. I bet she doesn't sound like that, but anyway, here we go. Nissa, who shakes the world onto the battlefield for the umpteenth time this weekend. Let's get going, bring the breeding pool to life, and swing-a-ding-ding.
The land fights for us.
Card is incredibly, incredibly powerful. Paradise Druid is going to hang back on defense, potentially, and now here comes an attack for 6, and now the game dynamic changes. We're playing a sub-game now. It's no longer about Javier Dominguez beating Brad Nelson. It's about Javier Dominguez beating Nissa, who shakes the world.
Oh, yes. Cracking the Fabled Passage, let's go find another land, and let's try and resolve this Nissa who shakes the world. He needs his draw to be kind. He needs a counterspell or something. It's a Castle Vantress, which is pretty good, but not what he needed right now, I don't think.
Yeah, and now Javier's hand is forced to, okay, I need to try to resolve a Nissa because I'm so far behind. So here, I have to play my one spell. Brad's going to gust this predictably, and he is going to get to run away with this game. Brad has played a beautiful game, just like Javier did in the last one, and it's pretty fitting that I think we're going to be headed to a third game between these two great players who tested together for this tournament and have dominated it in just a moment.
First things first, let's see where this Nissa's going. How long does Javier want to continue this matchup? Paradise Druid is not going to be doing any attacking.
Javier's best bet right now is after the draw step. In the draw step after Brad draws, put Nissa back on top of the deck. That's his best bet there, and so he's going to make that play. And do keep in mind, because Javier actually has a Nissa on top of his deck, that's the card he's going to draw and get to play the next turn because he has no choice but to play it. You saw Brad's draw step, Ailey, of a forest. Not particularly good right now. Would have preferred for that to be a counter. So he's got to try to cross the finish line real fast.
Oh yeah, that's what he's doing. Big red button. Paradise Druids are going to trade off Breeding Pool and Brazen Borrower, get him for 6 points of damage. He's going down to 8, and the race is on.
But what's interesting, what's notable about this is what's going on here is very transparent, okay?
Yeah.
So here's your attack. Javier's going to consider blocking, right? Okay, maybe yes, maybe no. Javier's going to draw his card, which is a Nissa. He has to play it or he can't win. Yeah. So he's going to play that. He's going to make a creature. He'll do some attacking. But Brad's top card is also Nissa, so Javier knows that that's coming.
Yeah.
The only thing that Javier doesn't know is what card is in Brad's hand. But his hand is forced. He has no choice but to play this spell, so all he can do is hope that it resolves.
So it resolves without any hesitation. Nissa, who shakes the world, back on the battlefield for Javier. Brings an island to life. It's going to get swinging himself. It's got Vigilance. May as well if the trade is offered. That's pretty good for Javier, but I don't think Brad Nelson is too interested in that right now.
Yeah, we will see because Brad can trade in such a fashion that is bad news for Javier. Even though Brad wants to continue to push his advantage and he has a higher life total, he may have. I mean, the thing is that's nice for Brad is he has the option.
Yeah.
Now, for Javier, you can play around nothing. You can't play around Nightpack Ambusher, Frilled Mystic, blah, blah, blah. None of that stuff matters now. You have no cards in your hand, and Brad knows that.
Yeah.
And you also know that a Nissa is coming, so you might be forced to just hang back on defense, and that's what he's going to do.
Well, I mean, he's kind of just dead, isn't he? Well, I mean, Paradise Root would get through, so he'd be down. He'd go down 5.
Correct. So I mean,
Yeah,
what we could see here is that if Brad plays Nissa, makes a land, attacks with everybody, Javier can block a 3/3 with a 2/1, block a 2/1 with a 3/3, take section. No, he just is dead that way. So I believe he might just be straight dead. No, Paradise Druid comes
Paradise
through. So
Druid
yeah, down to 1. Down to 1.
Oh boy. Okay, so.
But one thing that is interesting in this game that we're watching, as is these players, and we put all of this narrative on Nissa, Brazen Borrower flies. And so as great as Nissas are on the battlefield, there's no answer to the flyer right now.
No, there's not. So let's see what the draw would be.
Crisis for you.
I guess it could be Krasis, yeah, as Brad said. Why not? He's the world champion. He's drawn some good cards over the course of his life, right? He gets to scry, too, with the mana he has available, thanks to Nixus. Thanks to Nissa. So, you know what? Jellyfish Hydro Beast, what do you say?
All right, off the top, let's go. Easy.
Yeah, rub them together, baby. Let's see it happen.
That is not a big jellyfish, so we're going to go to game number 3 between Brad Nelson and Javier Dominguez. I do love the rapport between these two
tap all the mana. Make them sweat. Make them sweat. Tap all the mana.
Make them sweat. Come on. Mind games. Let's do it. All right. You know what? That's great for us because we get to see game number 3 between...
I would have started tapping.
Yeah. There we go. There we go.
Yes, Brad Nelson, we wanted to see that too. So game number 3 between these two superb players. They're fighting for their spot in the upper final. I love these players. They're fantastic.
Yeah, they're great friends. There's a feeling when you play against teammates that you kind of dread. You don't enjoy it. You guys all want to be first, second, and third place at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But if you are going to have to run into each other, now is a heck of a time to do it, playing for grand finals, and just thinking to yourselves, hey, man, we broke the format for the tournament.
Yeah.
This feels pretty darn good, and one of us is going to the finals.
I mean, hell, it's a win for them. 3 of them in the top 8.
Yes.
It's bittersweet, whoever comes away with this victory. But yeah, I'm just looking forward to this game number 3 between Brad Nelson, Javier Dominguez, Simic Flash, the deck that has all but broken the tournament.
Javier has already submitted. Brad thinking a little bit more here. Javier slightly advantaged here because he is on the play. Play is better than on the draw in this matchup, which means he can get to the mana acceleration before Brad can. So those are things just to keep in mind as we prepare to take a look at opening hands here for Game 3.
It's the final countdown.
Yes, it is.
Okay, take a look at this opening hand. That's not great. You don't want to see those many expensive spells without any mana acceleration.
Yeah,
so I think we're going to see this sent back.
You've got no permission, no way to interact with your opponent. You do have cards that you wish you'd like one Chemister's Insight. You'd like one Nightpack Ambusher. You'd probably want to replace one of those Chemisters with a land, one of those Nightpack Ambushers with like a Growth Spiral or a Perilous Druid, something like that. It's not a clean mix. It's not a clean mix. So if you keep this hand, you're relying on Temple of Mystery of getting the work done, and that wasn't going to happen.
That's not wonderful.
This isn't your favorite, but what you do have here is you have a Mystical Dispute to interact, and you have a card to play towards a Nissa, and that's good enough on a mulligan to 6.
All right, so getting things going here. Breeding Pool Forest down for Javier. Island down for Brad Nelson. He's got 2 Nightpack Ambushes, Growth Spiral, and Frilled Mystic, along with 2 Castle Vantris.
So where things get a little bit interesting here if you're Nelson is, which land do you want to play? And also, do you actually want to play Growth Spiral now in your main phase? Do you want to play it on your opponent's turn? Those are real decisions at this moment.
Is Growth Spiral worth countering now if he does fire it off?
Well, given the texture of Javier's hand, I would argue yes.
Okay. Drawing a card for turn. It's a Breeding Pool off the top of the library for Javier Dominguez. He's going to play it. Still just has the Mystical Dispute and working towards that Nissa. No mana acceleration for him. Growth Spiral may get fired off here by Brad.
Now, last time we were here, for what it's worth, Brad fired off Growth Spiral on turn 3, not turn 2. So in order to maybe engage in a counter war and resolve something later. So he could have very easily played Growth Spiral on that last turn. He elected not to, which is very, very, very notable. Because he may not fire it off on turn 3 either. But if you watch that match when they played earlier in the tournament, this is the same play that he made. And now Javier lived through this experience, and then he got absolutely annihilated for interacting with Brad.
Nightpack, go.
That's what he did last time.
He did.
Is he resolved Nightpack Ambusher. Brad took advantage of that in a very, very big way.
This time. Go on, go on, go on. Nightpack, go, go. Oh! All right, so Nightpack Ambush is going to hang out, probably get played out with 5 mana available. Nissa, who shakes the world, is also in hand. Want to protect these very, very powerful threats in hand. That's a Hydroid Crisis for Brad Nelson, along with an Ether Gust.
That's so crazy. That exact sequence where Brad could have played Growth Spiral on turn 2 last game, when they played the very first time in the tournament, that exact sequence where Brad said, I'm not gonna Spiral on 2, I'm gonna Spiral on 3. Javier responded in kind. Brad annihilated him for making that decision, and Javier decided, you know what, this time I'm not gonna run into the same mistake that you tried to trick me with last time. Great players learn very, very quickly.
Fabled Passage cracked. Let's go find a basic land from our library, give it a shuffle. And let's try and resolve something. Nightpack Ambusher on the stack.
And see, the reason that Brad can do this, so let's take a look at what this play looks like.
Yeah.
What this play looks like is I have a Mystical Dispute in my hand.
Yeah.
So if you want to try to counter this, I'll counter back.
Yeah.
And if you counter this, think of what Javier did to Brad in the first game. Well, we had this little fight, and then I countered your Nightpack Ambusher, and what happened to me then? You played a Nissa, and I lost immediately.
Yeah.
So now Javier's looking at his hand, and he's saying, okay, well, I mean, you're representing a lot of different things here with all these cards in your hand. I guess I have to let this resolve because it could get worse for me, like what I did to you in game 1.
But, like, where's the line? Where do you go, okay, I can react now, or no, I have to wait? You know, I have to wait until the coast is clear.
It's a very tough question to answer. That's what makes these games so dynamic and difficult, and why we're watching these great 2 players decide where is the line. They may not even know because they are a little bit inexperienced in the matchup because they tested together, but they didn't really test the matchup.
Yeah. Fancy that. So the longer, though, that Javier waits, the better chance Brad has of finding a counterspell or having mana open for a counterspell.
Absolutely.
There's the Frilled Mystic.
Yeah.
So is he happy for him to use it on the Night Pack, hoping that the way is now clear for his Nissa?
Well, Brad's numbers add up in a perfect way here, and what I mean by that is the ability to go Frilled Mystic plus Ether Gust with 6 mana, 3 of which is being blue, which is perfect for him. Now, does he want to make this exchange? That's a bigger question. But he has the opportunity to do that, and because there's only a single blue open, you know, the only card you have to play around right now is Mystical Dispute.
Yeah.
But the following turn, given what happened to Brad just about 20 minutes ago, we're trying to pick a fight to resolve guess who? Nissa. We're trying to have this little fight to resolve Nissa. So if the dog resolves, okay, and Brad says, you know what? That's okay. I'm going to let that work its way through. And now he might try to resolve another Ambusher of his own because Ambusher in packs can overwhelm a Nissa.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The puppy dogs get bigger with each Nightpack Ambusher on the battlefield. Oh, boy. So now Javier is in not the best position, but he is clear, hopefully, to fire off a Nissa who shakes the world. It's probably going to get Ether Gusted back to the top of his library, so he's going to have to wait to get that down on the battlefield. He can Mystical Dispute it.
And he will Mystical.
He will, yeah.
This is going to be a fight that Javier is going to win.
Oh, yeah,
so you're going to see Mystical Dispute take care of the Gust. Nissa's going to join the battlefield. Of course, you're going to get the untapping and the plussing of Nissa, everything that we've seen over the course of this match. Here is the advantage right now for Javier. I wouldn't say that he's ahead. But what he has going for him is he has a Hydroid Crisis in hand. Yeah. So he has a huge payoff for his Nissa.
Yeah.
The problem is that the numbers, again, are not lining up appropriately for Javier because he has a 4-4 and a 3-3 versus 2 5-5s and a 4-4. That's the issue right now for Javier. Brad has set things up in such a fashion that if he resolves a Nissa, it's not the end of the world like it was in the first game.
Yeah. And yeah, obviously the more he, or the less he does on his turn, the more dogs he's going to get. So he can just overwhelm, take care of Nissa, and then just send the entire pack to face.
Exactly, because look at the battlefield. Where are the good blocks here for Javier? They don't exist. And that's the entire point, is that there are no good blocks here. Yeah. And he can only tap that island for a single blue, because it's not a breeding pool, so it's not going to be able to tap for blue-green and represent Ether Gust. So now Brad is able to make a very straightforward attack. Yeah. He set this up beautifully over the course of a couple of turns, and Javier's in a rock and a hard place where this Nissa that won him the game in game 1 is much worse now.
Yeah. So it looks like we're just going to prioritize getting rid of one Nightpack Ambusher, limit the amount of puppies that get made. I take that all back, as now he's changing his blocks. Going to kill the token, keep the Nissa alive at 1.
Yeah, but how's this look?
This is terrible.
This doesn't look good, right? The battlefield's going to end. Brad's going to have a 4-4 Nightpack Ambusher after one of them dies. If Javier makes that block, Nissa will be down to 1, and then there's not a lot to do with that. Oof. So now Javier is going to make these blocks. Nissa's down to 1. Javier's going to lose his battlefield. He still has his Planeswalker. Brad's going to play a land, has Frilled Mystic at the ready to counter the Hydroid Crisis and advantage Brad Nelson right now, even though Javier has resolved a Nissa. Again, demonstrating some sort of mental superiority, at least for right now, in the matchup.
Oh boy, things are not looking good here for Javier Dominguez. Brad Nelson with 4 wolves on the battlefield. Javier just with the Nissa. He's got a Hydroid Krasis. He will get the cards and the life off of it, but how do you survive against this pack?
That's the problem.
Ooh.
You really don't. As good as Nissa is, and Nissa is one of the best cards in the format. One could argue after the weekend, depending on how our finals go, this might be the best card in the format still after all this time. And it may not be good enough to win this game. That's how good Night Pack Ambusher is. And both of these cards are in the same deck, which shows just why these players are playing for the grand finals right now.
So Javier just trying to find how does he get out of this, paying 2 life. Oh, adding all the stops. He's going to start adding a bunch of mana. And let's get a big jellyfish, hopefully onto the battlefield, but we know that it's going to get countered straight away.
Yeah, almost assuredly this is going to get countered. So if you are Javier, you're going to tap one of your lands. You're going to try to dump as much mana as you can into this. Maybe try to bluff a counterspell, as it were. And maybe Brad plays a little bit too much around this. But I think this is straightforward enough here for Nelson. He's just going to say, yo, I'm countering this.
Oh, yeah.
I want to snowball and continue to push my advantage here. So there's your Frilled Mystic.
All right, X equals 8, draw 4, gain 4, up to 18 he goes, but look at that battlefield on the other side. Things are looking a little bit frightening for Javier Dominguez.
Those draws there are okay. We can take a look at each one of these individually. Negate is just kind of no good right now. It could be good depending on how Brad's draw steps kind of shape up, and Island doesn't really change anything. Krasis down the road, well, that one could be good if Javier is actually able to make it to his next turn with a Nissa on the battlefield. Gust is a card that he can cast, and that can maybe mess some things up a little bit. And then the Paradise Druid, not particularly good. So not a great Hydroid Krasis there for Javier Dominguez.
Could he go for a Hydroid Krasis, try and find an Ether Gust, send the Breeding Pool back, and then just swing in for victory?
I mean, he could take a look at the option of playing a Hydroid Krasis pre-combat and kind of going from there, and I think he might be considering that right now. It's obviously not going to be nearly as big as Javier's that he was casting earlier in the turn, but I like just starting with attacking here, and this is where Brad is so good, because this game has devolved into a mid-range game. It's not a flash counterspell game. That's not the kind of Magic that he's elite at. It's when we play a green mid-range-esque game that he's so good, and that's where we are right now.
So 3 of the team going towards Nissa, who shakes the world. The 2 9-pack ambushers going straight for face. We can see a block and an Ether Gust to send something away, but this Nissa is going down.
Yeah, I like the splitting here of the attack by Nelson. Nightpack Ambusher looks like it's going to go back on top of the deck. That's the target here with the Ether Gust. This is not the end of the world. Is it going to make these wolves a little bit smaller? Yes, but ultimately, at the end of this combat, we are going to see Nissa leave the battlefield. And do keep in mind that this Breeding Pool, I do not believe it tender to block, so that means it will not be blocking, period.
So Brad just deciding, is it going to go to the top of the library? And yes, it is. So 9-pack Ambusher will come back to him. Nissa, who shakes the world, is taken care of. 9-pack Ambusher number 1 getting through for the 4 points of damage. Javier is down to 14. Brad Nelson hasn't taken any damage.
And just so you know, the reason that Brad was waiting there, there's not much of a decision to make. You see his hand, and he doesn't know what's on top of his deck. All that was is him pausing to say, I have a counterspell. I need to think about this. That's all that was. There's no reason to hastily make that decision. Sit there, tank, make it so that your opponent thinks that, oh, he may have something else going on. That's all.
Masters of the game, these two, for sure. Here we go. Big Hydroid Krasis from Brad Nelson. Let's see what we find off the top of the library.
And I like this play a lot here by Brad. There's no reason to play around Mystical Dispute. You see him pumping the fist, knowing his Krasis is in. That's a 6/6 flyer, and that is it.
Congratulations, Brad Nelson. Your World Championship dreams stay alive. Moving on to the Grand Finals against Piotr Głogowski. But can we just say, Javier Dominguez, what an absolutely stunning season he has had.
He's been amazing, and I can't wait to watch him play at the World Championships next year in Hawaii as well. But for Brad Nelson, it's all in his hands now. I know he said over and over he's been a blank slate. I don't buy it, buddy. I've known him too long. There's a smile. There's a sigh of relief. There was a fist pump. He's in this tournament. He wants to qualify for Worlds. He wants to play it in for another year. I think that would make it 6 years in a row. He's got to win not once, but twice. And you have to remember, Mythic Championship 3, when we were there,